The morning fog clings to the Thames like a living thing, reluctant to release its grip on the water below as you approach the southern gatehouse of London Bridge in 1640. But this is not merely a bridge. That word fails to capture what rises before you through the mist. This is a street, a neighborhood, a self-contained world suspended above moving water, where hundreds of people are born, live, labor, love, and die without ever truly leaving this extraordinary span of timber, stone, and human audacity. The bridge stretches before you like a strange horizontal tower, its buildings packed so tightly that from certain angles you cannot see the river at all, only the continuous wall of structures that seem to deny the very existence of the water they depend upon. You step onto the bridge at its southern approach, and immediately the sensation is vertiginous, disorienting. Beneath your feet is not solid ground, but an ancient stone structure resting on 19 arches, each one forcing the Thames into narrow channels where the water rushes with such violence that only the most skilled watermen dare shoot the rapids in their wherries. The sound is constant, a deep hydraulic roar that never stops, day or night, the river compressed and angry, grinding against the bridge's foundations with a patience that is slowly, inexorably winning. The bridge has stood for more than 400 years, but it groans and shifts, and everyone who lives here knows intimately the sounds that mean safety and the sounds that mean danger. There are stories, always stories, of buildings collapsing into the Thames, of entire families disappearing in moments when timber finally surrenders to rot and weight and time. The houses begin almost immediately, rising 3 and 4 stories tall, their upper floors jutting out over the roadway so dramatically that neighbors in facing buildings can lean from their windows and share gossip, borrow tools, or conduct the small intimacies of community without ever descending to street level. The architecture is aggressive, defiant of gravity. Each floor projects further than the one below, creating structures that are top-heavy, illogical, yet somehow standing. This is not accident, but calculation. Property on the bridge is among the most expensive in all of London, for space here is absolutely finite, bounded by the river on both sides and the bridge's length. So builders construct upward and outward, stealing air, claiming every possible inch, creating homes and shops that seem to defy the basic principles of engineering. You walk beneath these overhanging structures, and the daylight disappears. The roadway becomes a tunnel, enclosed by buildings on both sides, with only occasional gaps where you can glimpse the river below. The timber frames of the houses are darkened by centuries of smoke and grime, their wattle and daub walls patched and repatched, their windows tiny and irregularly placed. Some houses are painted, faded, reds and yellows and blues that might once have been cheerful, but now look diseased in the dim light. Others are simply bare wood, weathered to the color of old bones. The effect is claustrophobic, oppressive, yet there is something intimate about it too, as if the bridge is holding you, protecting you from the vast indifference of the city that sprawls on both shores. The shops occupy the ground floors, their fronts open to the roadway in the traditional manner. A glover's establishment displays its wares, leather gloves in every size, some plain, others elaborately embroidered, still others lined with rabbit fur for wealthy customers who can afford such luxuries. The glover himself, a man perhaps 50 years old with hands stained permanently brown from working leather, nods as you pass. He has spent his entire life on this bridge, inherited the shop from his father, will pass it to his son if God wills it and the bridge stands long enough. Next door, a haberdasher sells ribbons, buttons, thread, pins, the small necessities of life that people always need. A woman examines a length of ribbon, holding it up to what little light penetrates this enclosed world, judging its quality, negotiating the price with the practiced skill of someone for whom every penny matters. The smells are overwhelming, layered, inescapable. Smoke from cooking fires hangs in the air. Every building has a hearth. Every hearth produces smoke that has nowhere to go but up through thatched roofs or out through cracks in walls. Mixed with the smoke is the smell of the river below, mud, sewage, dead fish, the complex rot of a working waterway that serves as highway, sewer, and occasional graveyard. Add to this the scent of unwashed bodies. Bathing is infrequent, considered dangerous even, for opening the pores might allow disease to enter. People wash hands and faces, but rarely more, and in the close quarters of the bridge, human smell becomes almost visible, a presence you navigate around. Then there are the commercial smells: leather and wax, baking bread, the metallic tang of the ironmonger's shop, the sweet rot of the fruiterer's unsold goods, the almost narcotic richness of the spice merchant's establishment, where peppercorns and cloves and cinnamon bark are weighed out in tiny quantities because they are worth more than silver. You pause at one of the gaps between buildings. They call these sterlings, where you can look down at the river. The view is dizzying. The water churns white around the bridge's arches, moving so fast that it seems impossible anything could survive passage through. Yet you watch as a wherry approaches, its waterman timing his approach with the precision of long experience. Then suddenly they are through, shooting between the arches in seconds, the passengers clutching the gunwales with white knuckles. London Bridge or London Bredge, goes the saying. You either pay your fare to shoot the bridge or you disembark and walk around, boarding another boat on the other side. Many choose the latter. Lives are lost here regularly, bodies swept downstream to be found days later, bloated and unrecognizable. Looking down also reveals the bridge's underside, a chaos of wooden supports, repairs, additions, all encrusted with the debris the river deposits. Birds nest in the crevices, their droppings adding to the general accumulation. Occasionally, something moves in the shadows below. Rats, impossibly large, living in the cavities within the bridge's structure, feeding on everything the inhabitants above discard. The bridge is an ecosystem, layered, with its own hierarchies of predator and prey. You move deeper into the bridge's length, passing a barber-surgeon's shop identifiable by its striped pole. Red for blood, white for bandages, the colors spiraling upward in a symbol everyone understands. Through the open front you can see a man in the chair, undergoing a tooth extraction. The procedure is clearly uncomfortable as the barber-surgeon applies his pliers with practiced efficiency, bracing himself for leverage. There is no anesthetic beyond strong alcohol, and while the patient endures the procedure with a leather strap between his teeth for support, the other customers waiting their turn look away, knowing their own appointment approaches. This is medicine on the bridge. Direct, immediate, necessary. The barber-surgeon also lets blood, sets bones, lances boils, and performs minor surgeries. He learned his trade through apprenticeship, not university, and his skill is measured by how many patients survive and recover under his care. Across the narrow roadway, a bakery sends out waves of heat and the yeasty smell of rising dough. The baker's family lives above the shop. You can hear children's voices, an argument, something breaking. The bakery is both blessing and curse to its neighbors. The warmth is welcome in winter, making nearby rooms habitable without their own fires. But in summer, the heat becomes unbearable, and there is always the terror of fire. The bridge has burned before, partially in 1633, just 7 years ago, when several houses were destroyed. Fire is the nightmare that haunts everyone here. The buildings are timber, thatched, packed together, filled with cloth and paper and all manner of combustible material. Once fire starts, it spreads with terrifying speed. Every household keeps leather buckets filled with water, and the parish maintains rudimentary firefighting equipment, but everyone knows these are gestures, hopeful rituals against an inevitability. You climb a narrow staircase, barely wide enough for one person, leading to the upper floors of one of the residential buildings. The stairs are dark, steep, each step worn concave by centuries of feet. Your hand trails along the wall, feeling grime, moisture, the rough texture of plaster applied over wattle and daub. At the first landing, a door stands open, and you glimpse the life within. A single room, perhaps 12 feet square, serves as home to an entire family. A pallet bed occupies one corner, where parents and youngest children sleep together for warmth. Older children sleep on the floor, or in the loft space above, accessible by a ladder. A table, 2 stools, a chest for possessions. This is the furniture, the entirety of what they own. Clothing hangs from pegs on the wall. A small window, covered with oiled paper rather than glass, admits a dim, greasy light. A woman nurses an infant while stirring a pot suspended over the hearth. She is perhaps 30, but looks 50, worn down by childbearing, by work, by the relentless effort of keeping a family fed in this expensive city on this expensive bridge. Her husband is a journeyman cooper, making barrels for the merchants who ship goods upriver and down. He leaves before dawn to reach his workshop in the city, returns after dark, 6 days a week. The children, there are 4 who survived infancy, 2 others who did not, contribute what they can. The eldest, a girl of 9, works as a servant in a wealthier household. The second child, a boy of 7, runs errands for shopkeepers, earning pennies. The younger 2 are still underfoot, still mouths to feed without yet being hands to help. The woman notices you watching and offers neither smile nor frown, just acknowledgement. Strangers are common on the bridge. Too many people, too little space, too much overlap of lives. Privacy is not really possible here. Everyone knows everyone else's business, hears their arguments, smells their cooking, observes their comings and goings. The buildings are too thin-walled, too close, too interconnected for secrets. Continuing upward to the topmost floor, the ceiling is so low you must duck. The room here is tiny, rented by a single man, an apprentice to one of the goldsmiths whose shops occupy the more prestigious central section of the bridge. He is perhaps 16, bound to 7 years of service, living in conditions that are miserable even by the standards of this place. The room is barely large enough for a narrow bed and a small chest. There is no hearth. He must go to an ordinary for hot food or eat bread and cheese cold. In winter, this room must be nearly unendurable, the wind howling through gaps in the roof, frost forming on the inside of the walls. But he endures because he must, because this is the price of learning a trade that might, if fortune favors him, allow him to establish his own shop someday, to marry, to climb from survival to something approaching security. Back on the roadway, the traffic is constant and chaotic. Carts rumble over the uneven stones, their iron-rimmed wheels creating a din that echoes between the buildings. Horses strain against their loads, their hooves striking sparks. Pedestrians dodge between vehicles, press against building fronts to let carts pass, curse when splashed by mud, and worse from the kennel running down the center of the roadway. A flock of sheep is being driven across, their bleating adding to the noise, their presence causing complete gridlock as they mill about, confused by the enclosed space, resistant to the drover's efforts to keep them moving. Minutes pass before the jam clears and traffic can resume. You reach the chapel, actually a small church, St. Thomas's, built on the bridge itself, one of the few stone structures in this timber world. It occupies a gap in the buildings, creating an open space, a pocket of relative quiet. The chapel serves the bridge community, and a few faithful are inside even now, kneeling before the altar, seeking comfort or guidance or simply a moment's respite from the demands of life. A priest in plain robes tends to his duties, his voice low, offering prayers that float upward toward the vaulted ceiling. This is an Anglican establishment now, has been since Henry VIII's break with Rome a century ago, though some of the older parishioners remember or have heard stories of when this was a Catholic chapel, when there were saints' statues and more elaborate rituals. Those changes still rankle in some hearts, though speaking openly against the established church is dangerous. Beyond the chapel, you enter the bridge's most affluent section, where wealthy merchants maintain their establishments. The difference is immediately apparent. The buildings here are larger, better maintained, with glass in the windows, actual glass, expensive and rare, a clear declaration of wealth. The shops sell luxury goods. Fine fabrics from the continent, spices from places most Londoners have never heard of, jewelry, books, imported wines. The customers who frequent these establishments are well dressed, their clothing made from good wool and linen, their shoes leather rather than wood. They speak with the confidence of people who have never known true hunger, who assume the world will generally accommodate their desires. One shop in particular catches your attention, a goldsmith's establishment that is really a bank. For goldsmiths have discovered they can make money not just from creating jewelry, but from holding other people's wealth and lending it out at interest. The goldsmith, a man of about 40 with sharp eyes and soft hands, sits behind a counter conducting business with a merchant who needs credit for a trading venture. They negotiate interest rates, discuss collateral, speak in terms that exclude the uninitiated. This is how wealth grows. Not through labor, but through making money beget more money, through understanding systems that workers hauling barrels or gutting fish will never comprehend. You climb again, this time into one of the wealthy households that occupy the upper floors above the premium shops. The contrast with the earlier dwelling is absolute. Here is a suite of rooms, a receiving room, a private chamber, even a small room dedicated entirely to storage. The furniture is substantial. Carved chairs, a table that required multiple men to carry up the stairs, a bed with actual curtains that can be drawn for warmth and privacy. Tapestries cover the walls, providing insulation and displaying wealth simultaneously. The hearth is large, and someone, a servant, keeps it constantly fed with good coal, not the cheap, smoky kind. Glass windows can be opened or closed with leaded panes that, while not perfectly clear, admit real light. The lady of the house sits in a chair, doing needlework, her hands moving with the practiced ease of someone for whom such work is leisure rather than necessity. She is perhaps 35, dressed in a gown that cost more than most bridge residents earn in a year. Her hair is elaborately arranged, and her face has been whitened with lead powder, a fashion that is slowly poisoning her, though she knows this and does it anyway because pale skin announces that she does not work outdoors, does not labor, is fundamentally different from the women scrubbing steps and hauling water. A servant, a young woman from the countryside, perhaps 17, paid a few pounds a year plus room and board, enters with refreshments, wine, preserved fruits, delicate pastries. The mistress barely acknowledges her, as one might barely acknowledge a useful piece of furniture. From this wealthy home's window, you can see across the river's width to the opposite shore, to Southwark with its theatres and less reputable establishments. You can see wherries plying back and forth, the watermen earning their livings one fare at a time. You can see, upriver, the great houses of nobles, and downriver, the ships and warehouses of the maritime trade that is making England wealthy. This is the view that wealth purchases, elevation, perspective, distance from the chaos below. But even here, even in this affluent space, the bridge asserts itself. The floor tilts slightly, the entire structure has settled unevenly over centuries, and nothing is perfectly level. At night, when the wind picks up, the building creaks and sways just perceptibly, a reminder that you are suspended over moving water, that everything here is temporary, conditional, dependent on the continued integrity of stones and timbers that are slowly, always, surrendering to entropy. Descending again to the roadway, you notice a commotion near one of the Stirlings. A crowd has gathered, and you push through to see what has drawn their attention. A man has collapsed in the street, perhaps 40 years of age, and it appears he has passed away suddenly. People stand around, discussing what should be done with respectful solemnity. A priest is summoned to offer prayers. The parish beadle arrives to arrange proper removal to the nearest church, where inquiries will be made to determine if the man has family to claim him or whether he will receive a parish burial. Death from sudden illness or heart failure is common enough in this era that the crowd's response is practiced, efficient. Within minutes, most have returned to their business, though a few linger to ensure the man is treated with dignity. You continue walking, approaching now the northern end of the bridge, where the buildings give way once more to open space and the gatehouse rises before you. And there, displayed above the gate on pikes, is a grim reminder of the era's justice system, the preserved remains of those executed for treason against the crown. This was a common practice throughout medieval and early modern Europe, a public declaration meant to deter rebellion. The bridge is not merely a crossing or a street or a community. It is also a boundary, a threshold between the world beyond London and the controlled space within the city walls. These displays remind all who pass that order is maintained through the power of the state, that rebellion carries severe consequences, that authority rests with those who control the law and its enforcement. A group of children play near the gatehouse, going about their games with the resilience typical of youth in any era. They chase each other, shrieking with laughter, weaving between adults, nearly colliding with a cart. To them, the harsh realities of their time are simply part of the world they've inherited. They have never known different circumstances, cannot easily imagine that things might be otherwise. This is how each generation adapts to its environment. Familiarity renders even difficult conditions ordinary, part of the accepted backdrop of daily life. As afternoon light begins to slant through the occasional gaps in the buildings, you realize you have spent hours traversing a structure that is barely a quarter-mile long. The bridge contains such density of life, such compression of human experience, that it distorts normal relationships between time and distance. You have walked through slums and wealth, past birth and death, observed labor and leisure. Witnessed the entire spectrum of London existence compressed into this singular, extraordinary structure. The light shifts, and the bridge takes on a golden quality, the timber glowing warm, the shadows deepening. Shopkeepers begin to close their establishments, fastening shutters, securing goods. The traffic thins slightly, though it never stops. The bridge is a thoroughfare that must remain passable, a vital artery connecting London to everything south. As evening approaches, candles and oil lamps begin to appear in windows, tiny points of light creating patterns in the gathering dusk. Each light represents a family, a life, a set of hopes and fears and daily struggles enacted in rooms stacked vertically like cards in an impossibly ambitious house of cards. You stand once more at the southern approach, looking back at the bridge as it transitions into night. Smoke rises from 100 chimneys, merging with the mist rising from the river. Voices carry in the cooling air, singing from a tavern, a child crying, someone calling out good night to a neighbor, the splash of a wherry passing below. The bridge settles into its nocturnal rhythm, which is different from its day rhythm, but no less alive, no less vital. This structure, this impossible street suspended over water, is more than architecture or engineering or urban planning. It is a monument to human stubbornness, to the determination to claim every possible space, to make homes even where homes should not be, to build communities in the most unlikely places. The bridge is impractical, dangerous, overcrowded, filthy, magnificent. It should have collapsed centuries ago, yet it stands. It will stand for another 130 years before being finally, reluctantly dismantled, its buildings sold off, its stones repurposed, its place in London's geography erased, but its place in London's memory permanent. For now, in 1640, it remains, a world unto itself, neither fully of the river nor of the land, suspended between, defying categorization, resolutely, impossibly, unforgettably alive.